All right, we're live.
We are.
All right. I'm here with Michelle Moore from Collide Partners. We're here for LinkedIn Live at Optech in National Harbor, Maryland. Looking to chat a little bit about getting to hell yes. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Michelle Moore, and I'm with Collide Partners. New company started July the 1st, based in Atlanta, Georgia, but cover the United States.
Excellent. Okay, so getting to hell yes. In this series, what we talk about is sellers talking to sellers that sell to multifamily, built BTR and SFR. And why we have this conversation is that we want to make sure that we want to explore the buyer's process, the buyer's journey, and at the same time share a little bit about our thinking, our collective thinking around what it's like to get to hell yes. And
in multifamily.
Because the buyers there, and we talk about the buyer's motivations, the things they're struggling with. And what this really is oriented around is a problem-based conversation instead of a solution-based conversation, because we really want to angle in on, what are the problems that we solve? So kicking it off, your background, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are today, and then ultimately, how did you end up in this role?
Okay, so I've been in the industry 30 years. I've always been on the supplier partner side, which is very interesting, but I have so many what I like to call family members, but they're really close friends in multifamily because I've been in it for 30 years. That are like family to me, that I have spent a lot of time with, and I've learned a lot about the owner manager side. I've had major conversations with operators talking about their pain points, and that led me from a career that I started out in marketing and advertising with Apartment Finder, and it led me to the software as a service industry, into starting my own business where I try to help bridge the gap between operators and supplier partners. It's just hard in this industry. I always say multifamily is multifaceted. There are multiple decision makers on every level, and there are also influencers who are extremely important in this business. So you have to be sure that you know how to talk to every single one of those.
It's something that we're finding out very quickly, is that for us to have the right conversation with the right person at the right time, it's through this network of influencers. And I'll say they are incredibly helpful. Like, I think that what's been interesting about this community and selling into it is that, we're kind of breaking into the multifamily side. We've been in it for a while, but we got pulled into it. It wasn't strategic, right? And we're emerging as this is a very strategic vertical for us. And the people like yourself and so on, everyone we've been talking to and all the associations have been incredibly helpful. But getting into the hell yes conversation, right? We're narrowing down our conversation of who we want to talk to. But the thing about hell yes is about, when do you talk to the right people, right? So what's the problem that you're solving today?
So the problem that I solve today is I help find that right timing, and everything about multifamily has to be around timing. I always love to talk about the 4 seasons of multifamily. It's not summer, winter, spring, fall, none of that. Not football season, none but it has its own seasons. We have budget season, then we have holiday season, then we have the ramp up going into the leasing season, and then we have this extremely busy leasing season. And it's finding that right time to have that conversation with that operator. And my whole purpose in life, being a supplier partner for so long and knowing how difficult it can be to get in front of the right person, and how frustrating it can be from the owner managers to also have so many emails that don't even apply to what they do. And they're being asked to either make a decision on something and it's not even a need that they have, or it's not even in their wheelhouse. They get frustrated as well. So my ultimate goal is to cut that down. Let's start finding a way to work together when the timing is right for the owner manager. So that's my sole purpose.
That's you're like a pain seeker. The divining rod to find pain and problems.
Right.
With what I've been finding in our conversations, right? This is respect to not so much like that's interesting conversations, but hell yes conversations, is discovering what is blocking them from success. So I know in sales, we've been taught forever and ever, seek out pain points, do discovery, all these things. And that's generated a tremendous amount of that's interesting conversations, or that's a new way of solving the problem. But what we're trying to find is prospects and customers that are suffering through a blocker. And what I mean by a blocker is that, if I want to get into the Atlanta Partner Association or Atlanta area, I would definitely talk to you first, because I'm blocked in terms of networking and conversations in that space. I know you're bigger than Atlanta, but as an example, right? And so when we try and unblock ourselves, we seek to act promptly to resolve that pain. And so when you talk about the people you sell to, so who's your principal target so your buyers, are they both sides? Like do you sell to the
Supplier partner and
supplier
the
part
operator.
and the operator?
Yes. So I work with supplier partners. I can do an entire marketing campaign. Plus I partner that with a sales agency, which is never heard of. And no one's ever done this that I know of. And I bring that whole aspect of business to business leads, as well as introductions, anything that I can do to help you get in front of that right decision maker. So that I partner that up with marketing, and it's been very successful for my clients like CBX Connect and Phoenix Contracting.
Got you. And so they're your principal
Mhm.
buyers, but do you also sell to the operators
I
as
do.
well?
I sell the operators. Yes, thank you. I didn't answer all of your questions.
No, I just want to make it, because what's emerging, right, is you're not
Right.
just an agent for those sellers.
Right.
You're an agent for the buyers as well,
That's
right? And
correct.
you deliver value on both sides.
I do.
Right?
I do. So, for example, I have an owner manager right now that is really confused, and everyone is, about fraud. What do we do to help cut down this whole fraud situation that is getting worse and worse in our industry? So, what I do for owner operators is I go out and search for all of the companies that offer products that are related to fraud or whatever it may be. Doesn't just have to be fraud, but I bring all of those solutions back to the table with all of the information as transparent as I possibly can be. But I do narrow it down to 3 companies so that I can say, out of all the boxes you checked, operator, they check the boxes as well, so that we have a perfect marriage now. Now they may decide to go with one of the other vendors, and that's fine, but they will have their top 3.
Got you. And so really it's a broker relationship. So you have
It
to find
is.
2 hell yeses,
Yeah.
right? You
I
get it,
do.
which is I've always found, like in a brokering or marketplace kind of conversation, seeking to find supply and demand and matching it together. The value that you bring is not only the seeking to solve a problem and the ability to solve the problem, but it's the timing the problem needs to be solved.
Mhm.
And that's what the brokers tend to really,
Right.
generally are able to finesse that we're not able to do as sellers and buyers, because we're just not dialed into the market that way.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
Very interesting. So when you go, so would you say that the problem you solve for the operators is you're saving them time?
I am.
You're doing a scan of the available solutions for the specific problems.
Which they don't usually have time for. Their owners will tell them,
Yep.
get 3 bids, find 3 people. But what if those 3 people are not the true source for you? So I go out and shop all sources for you and bring that information back so that you are picking the very best product for your needs, to meet your needs.
So I'm curious about that, because my experience is that, I was in consulting forever and ever and ever, is that people are really bad at articulating what they want to solve. And so what's that experience like with you and Collide? Do you go through, what does that feel like from a buyer perspective?
So I hope I answer this correctly, but
Yeah.
one of the things that I do that I feel like is different from anyone else who's offering this type of service is that it's very personalized. So I actually go on site and talk to your property managers. I find out their pain points. What if they heard? I mean, they're in the know. They're talking to other property managers and other properties, and they know what's happening. So I'll find out from them. I'll get their sentiment, their buy-in, which is always good.
Yep.
Because a lot of times we don't get their buy-in. That's usually a step I always said it's often missed, and not on purpose, just we all get busy. So that's one of the things that I bring to the table. I also go out and talk to your peers, if you're an operator, and find out who they're using and how they feel about it. I know you all hear from your boss. Get some references, find out if other people like them. And do you have time to do that? Absolutely not. I mean, you'll call your friend, might get a reference that way, but go out and get true references. I talk to a lot of different clients that may not have any relation to you whatsoever, and get the true information about how that product works for them and bring that back to you.
Is that where the name Collide comes from?
That's exactly right. At the perfect intersection of opportunity and timing.
I love it. That's outstanding. Okay. And so when you're taking a look at your markets, there's going to be different buyer signals on both sides, right?
That's correct.
So on the vendor side and then also on the buyer side. So what are you looking for? Like when you're talking to the buyer side, what's their signal to you? What is their like, what's happening? What change is happening in their business? Or what's the signal that they're blocked that you can kind of rely on to filter on for your your leads, your prospects?
Right. Well, the biggest way for me to get to the hell yes with an owner operator is if they've had something catastrophic happen in their past. And I've heard nightmare stories where they received one bid from one client. And it was about a $1.5 million bid, $500,000 difference, and thought they were doing an apples to apples comparison, and found out they left out an important piece of that, and it ended up costing them about 800 grand just to recover from it. Those are the types of things that I try to avoid. I come in and look at contracts, scope of work, everything, to find those differences. So if I come across someone who has had that pain point, it's an easy hell yes.
No kidding. Yeah, they're in the burn unit.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So
how do you find those people? Like, when you're looking at a list of people that you're looking out to reach out to, and there's it's 1,000 operators in the Atlanta area. How do you find of those? Your time is valuable. You're talking to both buyers and suppliers, or buyers and vendors. How do you find the ones that are ready to move?
So, gosh, it's a mix of things. First of all, a conference like NMHC Optech is a great place to go, because a lot of decision makers are here, and I'm having already, I flew in last night and I've already had great conversations
it's very difficult to walk down the hall with you. I mean, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. But I've got I got 12 names I got to remember.
I can help you with that. But anyway, it is knowing people and having those conversations, and not having a conversation about one product, having that conversation about multiple things to find out what are you in the market for right now? What are you looking to do in 2025? It's going to change the scope of your business. What are the products you're going to be shopping? I place myself strategically at conferences where I can have those conversations with operators. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is knowing who the decision maker is. What is it? The 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Sure, yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah. So if I don't know someone, like I said, I was from Apartment Finder, and I talked to a lot of marketing people. So I'll go back to my old roots and find my marketing partner that I used to work with at a company, and find out who is the person that I need to talk to, and work that way. Also from the site level, going on site and talking to property managers, trying to find out the decisions that way. But it's like, I could go on and I could do a class on the personas of multifamily.
This is why you're here.
That's right. Well, we can do that. The personas of multifamily, how important each one of those are, how you need to know how to speak directly to each one of those personas. It's
all right, let's dig in.
Key to success.
So who's a good buyer in multifamily? Like for who's a good buyer? Sorry, what's bought? You were talking about fraud earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
So who's a good buyer for fraud?
You mean just in general?
Yeah, general, the role, like the job title.
Oh, so that's probably going to, so here's another thing, because there are different people in a management company that make decisions on portfolios. There's some that can make the decision across the whole management company. And we all think that we want to go after that key decision maker that can make the decision across the whole portfolio, right? That's the easy thing to do, but it's really not. That's the hard thing to do, because they're harder to get to. It's a longer process. So why wouldn't you start with a small portfolio within a management company and start pitching to them about your product and find out what their needs are? So to me, it's just finding that right person in that company that is having a fraud issue. You can find that out by going on site. We're talking about fraud a lot. We can talk about some other subjects too, like what you do. But
it's not an easy conversation.
No, but that's what you have to do, is you have to figure out. It's all just.
Well, I'll tell you what we do.
Okay.
So we centralize maintenance, right? And so we sell principally to, the regional manager, I'll call Circle, right? Because the regional manager is feeling the pain, but it could be the asset manager, VP maintenance. It could be one of those, VP maintenance, asset manager, regional manager, somewhere in that kind of the one arm's length circle, right?
Yep. And
what we do is I look at the available job postings. So if I see an operator has, like a 35 postings out in a specific area. Like if I'm looking at, I was looking at Dallas the other day, and saw a manager that had like an operator had like I think 35 different postings out there for field techs, right? Like, well, that to me, we're technology. Kind of the world, the way I look at it, is separated into 3 different options almost always. It's like hire people, outsource it, or get technology. There's kind of like, it's hard to find different, if you really dig deep, kind of a lot of those three choices.
Right. Yep.
And so like for partnerships, hire, outsource to you to do the partnerships rather than hire someone to do it. That's an example, right? Or there's technologies that do those sort of things too. So what we do is I go look at, okay, so if they're hiring people, to my mind, that's a reveal that there's some pain.
Yes.
They've already gone through the process of getting a job posting. They've gotten the budget for the FTE that's sitting open inside a org structure somewhere. They've created a job position. They've done a lot of work to try and solve this problem. And that's my kind of go-to. And I see there's a lot of job postings out there. They're probably growing. They've got money because they're hiring, and that makes them a good buyer, right? Versus someone who's completely very hard to find data about. They're probably not going to buy, or someone who's not growing at all, right? They're probably not going to buy technology. Maybe they're going to, or maybe they're not willing to change. Like for our business, there has to be a significant change to their business or a blocker for them to be frustrated enough to try something new.
Right.
We're something new. And so if your choices are hire more people, or maybe outsource to a third party, less than SMS, that kind of thing, SMS Assist or other of our alternatives, then you are already evaluating what you want to do to solve that problem. So you're past this, do I have a problem phase of the buyer's journey? You're into the decision-making phase, and you've decided to hire people.
Right.
And then the question that we have often in discovery is, well, how long have these job postings been open? And that's when I get the eye roll, right? Well, we never take it down because we're always hiring.
Right.
And so then I just ask other questions to dig in on it. And I go, well, hey, have you considered technology? And then, well, we didn't really know there's technology out there. And then now I've got a conversation.
Right.
Right. But it isn't about pitching and talking. That gets you to that position of trust where you can ask that question of, have you considered technology?
That's right.
And that's something that we're like, when we're in our journey to hell. And I for everyone listening, we haven't found hell yes yet. The purpose of this podcast is about getting to hell yes versus like knowing what hell yes looks like, because we're all on our own individual journey.
Right.
And we all have our own struggles, and we all mismatch our time with a poorly positioned prospect. And so like when I talk, that's what we look for. Those are our signals, right? And so when you're talking to, and you do mostly multi, but do you often work with REITs or owner operators or just operators, or what are those like in terms of selling into?
I work with any of them. Anyone that's got a CapEx project that they're getting ready to invest millions of dollars in, and you need to know, and you may be even clueless. Who else is out there? Just like what he's talking about with the technology thing. If you don't look, you don't know. And a lot of times owner managers will stop short of just who they know, right? To make a decision on a product. There's so much more out there. That's where I can come in. I can come in. I mean, I've met him. I've met so many people that have great products and services, technology driven, that can change the outcome for you in 2025. And that's what I want to put in front of you. And that is how I take what you do already a step further.
Well, it's interesting because to go out and hire is kind of like, I mean, there isn't an article in the multifamily kind of like thought space right now that doesn't talk about there's no people anymore.
Right.
But the answer, it's still safe to go out there and hire, because even though if it fails, you at least did the safe thing.
Right. That's right.
And so, I mean, to your point, for operators that are looking to break free from kind of convention or break free from maybe constraints that they no longer apply anymore. Like if your business model is based on an infinite amount of field labor, it's flawed.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's just wrong. Like the physics, the equation no longer works.
Right.
And so if that's the plan, we're going to go acquire some assets, or maybe we're going to build some buildings, whatever, and then we're just going to hire some people. You just said something that's not true any longer.
Yep.
And so that reality, that conversation, I mean, we rely on folks like yourself to bring that conversation up early, because it kind of gets a little, we're figuring out ways to ask the question without being kind of, I mean, it can be a little bit, there's a moment of silence for sure.
Right.
But I don't like to sit there telling people that they're wrong, because I appreciate their position that they're in, because they're trying as best as they can.
That's right.
With the knowledge, with the information that they've got.
And the time that they have. The amount of time.
Right. And so that's a valuable service that you provide, given that when you're in multifamily operations, you right now are probably short-staffed. You probably have grown quite a bit in the last 3 years. And it's a bit of a perfect storm with respect to making decisions around strategic initiatives. And folks like yourself source those that are in that spot.
Yep.
Because really, once you get the buyers kind of lined up,
Mm-hmm.
then you can match up with this. Then you're listening to suppliers, but ultimately the demand pull is going to come from the buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm looking for I want an AI driven. If I've had a fraud incident, or maybe I've got a recurring fraud that I can't shake free, I'm going to go look for an AI, a fraud solution. The hands in the air are like, Michelle, I've got a fraud problem. Am I going to hire people? Do I need to outsource this, or should I get some technology?
Right.
Right. And then you're going to say, well, you can hire people. This is what this looks like. There's 6 months to hire, 45% turnover.
Yep.
Once you train them, they're going to leave and go somewhere else.
That's right.
You can outsource it. These are expertise in just fraud management, identity, whatever. But now you're outsourcing the whole thing.
Right.
Do you want to have it both ways, where you want to have the touch point with the prospect and maybe the resident?
Mm-hmm.
You want to have the control of the situation, but you don't want to solve the problem with people.
Right.
You kind of fall into the technology bucket then.
You do. You absolutely do.
And so if I'm not going to solve with people, I fall into technology. But the world of like fraud multifamily, type that into Google. That's an eye roll and a lot of work too.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And one thing too, let's talk about technology for one more minute, because you can probably overcome this, but our industry.
We're at Optech.
Well, I know. Yes, we are. So there's a lot of technologies over the years in the past that have not done a great job at even implementing the process, or implementing whatever their product is into these management companies. And if anyone's listening from the operator side, I know you're shaking your head. Yes, that's very true. You've had technologies that have failed you. I had one time I was talking to a client and they said every piece of software is broken. Yes, it can be broken. But we are done a lot of work and brought in a lot of expertise. And I believe that the supplier side has they've turned a new leaf.
Mm-hmm.
They've got better implementation. They've got better products. They offer more than they ever have before. AI has come into play now. That's made everything so much more simple. So it's time to trust technology again in multifamily. And you can start right here. He's got a product. So it solves a pain point.
Well, and the alternative is the status quo. And like I said earlier,
that's right.
It just doesn't, that assumption no longer applies.
Status quo is
you may as well say 1% interest rates, because that also isn't true.
Yep.
Right. Like these are just factual things that simply don't apply any longer.
That's correct.
It's interesting you talk about implementation. So, and it's a hot topic, because it's just this weekend, I was listening to a bunch of our pitch calls, and the ones that kind of like, I call them, they just kind of go sideways out of the pipeline. They're just like sitting there floating, and that's interesting land.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like looking at what we were proposing, and of course we've got an end-to-end solution, but what I'm consolidating it towards is, how can you be live in one day, right?
Yeah.
And so we're ripping out all the other stuff that is kind of like friction, right? And we've decided to say, okay, how can a customer be live in one day, so they can eliminate all of that kind of like anxiety, implementation anxiety out of it. And then what we found, or what I'm hoping to achieve with this, is obviously deals close faster, but the first 90 days, the expectations are packaged in a way that we can definitely deliver the return on effort and return on fees. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And because if we make it too hard and too complicated,
then
there's too much change, there's too much political capital that needs to be expensed. And that's like, sometimes the political capital is worth more than the dollars.
Yeah, it is.
Especially with how you describe the industry, right?
Right, absolutely.
And so we streamlined it now to eliminate risk to implement based on how you just described, because everyone has said it is too complicated. My life is complicated. My people are complicated. Our
integrations are complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all those things. And so it's interesting that you bring that up, because we're hearing the same thing. Is like, we're as sellers, we love to talk about what we do, right?
Yes.
And we talk about it in all the wonderful genius that we packaged into this technology software. But that's not the hell yes problem they're trying to solve. And so what I'm kind of landing on is, we almost have to earn our way to solve the next portion of the solution. And so even like by showing the roadmap, like if now I've taken the other slides, all this stuff, and I boil it down to just like, and then we'll roadmap this stuff out in 90 days. But this is not for you to think about right now.
Okay.
So that we can really isolate the conversation. And again, like in this context of getting to hell yes, eliminate all the frustrations and anxieties that come with being a buyer. Because as a seller, we really have to be empathetic to the buyer and what their day-to-day looks like.
Right.
And what they've got to deal with and what their project, what their to-do list looks like. Because nobody ever wakes up on a Sunday or a Thursday and says, I want to buy technology today. I want to hire someone today, or I want to outsource something today. They do not do that.
Right.
And so we got to make that, like as sellers, we have to make that easier.
Right.
And it's funny to talk about it as a strategic direction, but it's so obvious in our lifetime today.
Yes.
Like you go buy a computer. Remember you bought a computer maybe 4 years ago and you had to like transfer all your data over. A nightmare, right?
Phone
like
too.
you'd hang on to an old computer forever just because you didn't want to transfer all the stuff. And then you keep the old computer just as a backup plan. But now you just like get a computer, you sign in, everything goes over. It's amazing.
Right.
And that's them thinking about the buyer's experience.
That's right.
And making it easy. So
absolutely.
Coming in to wrap it up here. So we've talked about making it easy. We talked about knowing the pain points of the audiences on both sides, really the vendors and the buyers for you. We talked about, when they are really anxious to buy, like in the fraud example, they've been burned, right? For some of the other things you look to solve for, what are things they say? I never want this to happen to me again.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Any examples?
I mean, well, the one that comes to mind is one I just read a case study on for CBX Connect, where they did a bid and they were over with their pricing. And when the management company did not do that apples to apples comparison, and look, apples and apples comparison comes from the 1800s, I guess, I don't know, but it still works today. So you have to make sure that you're comparing contracts to contracts. What does their contract say? Why? Asking those questions, why? Looking at the scope of work. Why did this one say that we've got to dig a hole, bury a box, put some wire in? This happened with CBX, not to CBX, but they lost a bid to a company who did not bid that process. CBX did, and it put them over budget. So the company didn't go with them. Well, now CBX is back in there solving the issue because that was going to cost another $1 million on top of whatever they had already paid with the other company. So someone when I was writing the case study, I was learning so much because I thought, why would someone just not compare the paper? Just put the paper side by side and see what's missing and ask those questions. But I know why. I know why you don't. You don't have that much time in your day. You wear way too many hats, and it's just not feasible. That's where a company like Collide Partners comes in, has that time, or even what he does. He's going to look at that and tell you, this one, here's what this one does. This is what I do. Here's your gap between my product and their product. Those are the types of things we've all got to slow down and start looking at.
It's really, if we talked about how you save time, but really what I just heard there is you help them de-risk decisions.
That is exactly right. That is key.
Right.
And so that.
Well, because really, like if you do a lot of sales reading, right? So, nonetheless, it talks about how, like, as a buyer, when you go buy something, you're moving into career risk.
Right.
Like you're approaching some risk, especially if it's technology, especially if it's a new way of doing something.
Right.
If you go put a job posting up there, even if you know it's going to fail, you're not absorbing any career risk on that. You're just doing what everyone has always done. And so, like, for a buyer to absorb that kind of risk, sometimes they want to say, well, we asked Michelle at Collide, and this is what she told us to do. And we've confident with her because we've used Michelle for the last 3, things we bought. Michelle's got a system, a process, a network. And because of that, I feel comfortable endorsing Michelle's decisions because you have de-risked my decision-making.
Right.
Because you're helping those handshakes happen.
That's right.
And for me as a buyer, de-risking a decision is more important than the time I got into that. That's what I actually spend time. You think of jobs to be done theory, right? I spend time to de-risk the decision. And so this way, they're not spending time. They're out there kind of like taking that job to be done. de-risk the decision to solve the problem, handing it to you.
Right.
You go absorb that risk and you get paid for it.
That is
That's a fair way.
Mhm.
And then you present a decision. You save them the time of all that, but ultimately as a buyer, you're saving them the risk.
Right.
And that's the conversation that you can have one-on-one, right? When
Yep,
when you're
it
having that
is.
personal conversation or drinks at the bars, like, what's your concern about choosing an AI-based fraud solution? What's your concerns about choosing a centralization maintenance software, right? What's your concern? All these different things, leasing bots,
Right.
right? Because like people are the buyers, and people, I don't know if you're familiar, have you heard of loss aversion theory?
Mm-mm.
Like loss aversion theory is just study and thing, but like that we're 5 times more apt to do something to prevent a loss
Mhm.
than to achieve gain.
Well, I would say that's very true.
And that's where risk comes in as a conversation.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So one piece of advice. So we'll kind of close this out. We're wrapping up. One piece of advice people looking to find hell yes in
Mhm.
multifamily.
Well, here's my biggest piece of advice, because I hear this all the time. Do not send out email campaigns through third-party sources. It's that we have systems in place now that can capture those. It's just a waste of time. I've had salespeople tell me that their boss requires them to send out 150 emails a week. Let's scratch all of that. What's most important is making sure that you get to that right decision maker, and that is a mapping process. That is not throwing a noodle against a refrigerator to see if it sticks.
I can echo that conversation. I've looked at some of my campaigns, like, so I'll get a lead that comes through. So I'm gonna reaffirm your point.
Okay.
As a seller, where
Mhm.
you kind of just go, oh my God, I sent that email. So let's imagine you're a prospect, right? And I would have sent you emails over the last like 180 days, right?
Mhm.
And then you've ignored them, right? But
Yeah.
then you finally want to get a hold of me and talk to me. You go, hey, Guillermo, I'm interested in Iris. We've got a problem. We can't hire people. We've got, growing units, whatever.
Mhm.
And then I go, sure. And then the first thing I do is I go look up, if we have any history on Michelle. And then I see some of the emails that I've written and I'm like, oh, that's so embarrassing. I can't believe I said that.
Can't believe us.
And I just
Go dogs.
hope- I just
You went
hope-
to Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't do that. And I just say, I hope to God that she doesn't go in her spam and look up, or like you have to go search, you go type in Guillermo, and all of a sudden you see this like 15 other emails that are like, I'm like,
Right.
oh God, please don't. So
Yep.
I would agree with that. It is a mapping exercise. It is a prioritization exercise,
Mhm.
and it's putting on the hat of the buyer
That's right.
and being empathetic to their role as well.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Offhand, who should we talk to next?
CBX Connect, and Jared Sanders is the CEO of that company, and he's here.
We just saw Jared.
introduced
I think it'd be
you.
a great guy to talk to, especially in that managed Wi-Fi space.
I'm telling you, that is it's interesting for our industry right now. People have a lot of reservations about going into community-wide Wi-Fi, and they're your people to talk to. So I think that would be great.
Oh, we'll chat with him.
And I'm actually doing a CEO Roadshow luncheon in Atlanta the day before AOD starts. Are you coming to AOD?
No, I'm not going to that one.
Assembly of Delegates. We'll
The
talk about
delegates.
it later.
That's
you
NHC. I think convender's play. Well, nonetheless,
It's
we'll
in
talk about
Atlanta.
that first.
Anyway, I'm going to have a CEO Roadshow luncheon there. Jared will be speaking on the topic, and not trying to sell you CBX, but to help you navigate through whether it's profitable or not, the laws and regulations that now impact that today. So if anyone is curious about any of that, please reach out to me, Michelle at collidepartners.com, 2 L's, and I'll be glad to invite you to that luncheon.
Excellent. And wonderful. This was a lot of fun. So thank you for joining LinkedIn Live. These are always a lot of fun. I especially love doing them in person. So
Yeah.
thank you for making time for that. Next one coming up, I believe, is next week. I'll have to check the calendar what that's for. Subscribe to the podcast. It's on Apple. It's also on Spotify. We're the only one that's called Getting to Hell Yes, which is unique.
Mhm.
And looking forward to having more conversations about multifamily. If you got any questions, comments, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. That's where I'm easiest to find you. What's the best way to find you, Michelle?
You can go to collidepartners.com. You can find me on LinkedIn under Michelle. I recently was married, so it's Michelle Roberts Moore. So Moore. It's a good name.
Roll Tide.
And Roll Tide.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we're live.